Welcome back to Movies Explained. Today's film is a drama thriller from 2016 titled Mine. The film begins with two U.S. Marine snipers, Mike and Tommy, in the North African desert on a covert mission to assassinate a terrorist. It's been 3 months and 6 days since they've been separated from their families, and Tommy finds it strange that Mike never mentions missing his family. He strikes up a conversation with Mike about his girlfriend, Jenny, but Mike is uninterested. Mike notices the target's Land Cruiser approaching and immediately alerts Tommy. Both of them are preparing to shoot the target when a large crowd arrives with a camel, revealing that it is a wedding ceremony. Mike has a clear shot at first, but the bride and groom quickly block his view. He is hesitant to shoot the terrorist for fear of killing an innocent person, but the major on the radio and Tommy repeatedly order Mike to complete his mission. Mike struggles to make a decision and kill the terrorist, but he is unable to do so. Unfortunately, some of the ceremony's armed participants detect the soldiers' presence and begin firing at them. The terrorist, along with other ceremony attendees, flee while Tommy and Mike are pursued by armed insurgents. The soldiers take cover behind a rock and are fortunate that a sandstorm breaks out, causing the enemies to stop attacking. Tommy and Mike are now exposed to the harsh desert conditions. They contact the base camp and request immediate evacuation. The major advises them to relocate to a nearby village 5 hours away from their current location. As a result, they set out on a journey to the village in order to be rescued. On their way, the soldiers come across a warning sign, and Mike is hesitant to proceed. He informs Tommy that over the last 4 decades, approximately 8,000 battles have been fought in North Africa, raising the possibility of various landmines being buried in the desert. When Tommy hears this, he tells Mike he's crazy and insists on continuing because they'll die of thirst in the desert. Mike begins to take tentative steps, while Tommy encourages him to be confident. After a short distance, both of them are exhausted due to the dazzling rays of sunlight, and Mike hands Tommy his water bottle, providing him with much-needed energy. Mike's fear grows with each step, while Tommy continues to move forward. Unfortunately, Tommy steps on a mine, which explodes and causes him to lose both of his legs. While Tommy screams in agony, Mike takes a step and realizes he has also stepped on a mine that will explode if he lifts his foot. Mike urges Tommy to calm down and reach for his bag and medical kit. Tommy injects 2 painkillers into his legs after several failed attempts and then grabs his backpack. Mike then instructs him to contact the major via radio. As Tommy speaks on the radio, Mike notices that it is not even turned on and continues to tell Tommy that he must turn it on. Tommy, on the other hand, loses hope and becomes emotional when he realizes he has no legs. Seeing his friend in such a desperate situation, he decides to lift his foot and assist him, but Tommy threatens to kill him if Mike makes the next move. Mike keeps his foot on the mine, but Tommy eventually shoots himself in the head, leaving Mike alone and stranded in the desert. Mike regains his composure and decides to help himself. He aims at Tommy's backpack and drags it towards him in order to use the radio, but the radio is out of batteries. Furthermore, the extra batteries are in Tommy's pocket, who is lying dead nearby. Mike then comes up with the brilliant idea of charging the radio with solar energy, which works. He contacts the major, informing him of his critical situation and requesting an immediate evacuation. In response, the major informs him of the impending storms in the desert, which makes sending the rescue team impossible. He goes on to say that if Mike wants to be rescued, he must wait the next 52 hours. Mike expresses surprise and informs the major that he is immobile with 1 foot on a mine and wonders how he can possibly remain in that position for 52 hours. The major suggests a solution. Because the mine is most likely very old, there is a 7% chance that it will not explode if Mike takes a step forward. Mike, on the other hand, dismisses the idea as ridiculous, and the major instructs him to use the Schumann maneuver, which entails digging a trench in the sand. After digging the trench, the person must cut his boot, which will remain on the mine and prevent it from exploding. Meanwhile, he must dive into the trench quickly to save his life. Mike is still hesitant to use this method because he is concerned that removing the foot will allow the mine to detect a drop in pressure and detonate. Despite his protests, Mike is forced to wait for the appointed time. Mike's contact with the major is broken as the radio's battery runs out. He sets his watch to 52 hours and begins waiting for his rescue. A storm is on its way, as predicted, and Mike is preparing to stay safe. He digs his gun into the sand, sticking it and creating support for himself so that if he keeps a tight grip on the gun, the storm won't blow him away. As the storm approaches, he struggles to maintain his position with the gun, but makes it out alive. When Mike opens his eyes after the storm, he sees Tommy's body beside him, which had been brought to him by the storm. He apologizes to his fallen comrade and pulls the radio's spare batteries from his bag. However, his own bag, which contained the radio, flew off in the distance. He sobs in despair because the batteries he just discovered are completely useless. Mike takes out his empty water bottle after nearly 9 hours and tries to drink the last drops. He begins firing in the air to signal for help, but when he sees no one nearby, he loses hope and decides to commit suicide. As he places the gun on his head, he notices a Berber approaching in a zigzag pattern. The Berber tells Mike to take the next step, but Mike explains that it could be his last. Mike expresses gratitude to the Berber for taking his empty water bottle to be filled. He asks him to fetch his bag, which is lying in the distance. Surprisingly, the Berber does not comply and departs, telling Mike that he must move on. After being parched in the desert for several hours, so he decides to drink his urine. Mike is about to take a sip when he notices a girl running towards him in the same zigzag pattern, and he realizes she is carrying his water bottle. He comes to the conclusion that she is the Berber's daughter who took his bottle and filled it. After drinking the water, Mike thanks the girl. She gives Mike a small toy soldier, but when he asks her to fetch his bag, she refuses and runs away, disappointing Mike. As night falls, Mike pulls out his phone and plays his girlfriend's last message to him. Jenny wishes him luck and requests that he return as soon as possible in the video. Mike breaks down as she ends her message by expressing her love for him. He lights some wooden pieces on fire so he can see around in the dark. Mike later appears tired, and his mind is taken over by sleep, so he closes his eyes. Mike suddenly opens his eyes to see that his fire has been blown away and he is surrounded by desert dogs who appear to be hungry. He opens fire on one of the dogs, and it dies after falling on a mine that explodes, frightening the other dogs, who flee immediately. The night passes, and Mike wakes up to find the Berber standing next to him, congratulating him on surviving the night against the dogs. Mike becomes enraged when the Berber calls him a lucky man and accuses him of being of no assistance. He accuses the Berber of knowing where mines have been buried, which explains why the Berber and his daughter always walk in a zigzag pattern. The Berber, on the other hand, tells him that he has no idea where the mines are and has always followed his destiny wherever it takes him. The Berber instructs Mike once more to trust his fate and move on, but Mike begs him to pick up his radio. This time, however, the Berber gives Mike his radio and he attempts to contact the Major. The Berber approaches Mike and cups his hands around his face, telling him he must become a free man. Mike recognizes Tommy's face in the Berber's and realizes he is hallucinating. As the Berber walks away, Mike cuts his shoe and notices his foot, which is in critical condition. To quench his thirst, he drinks his urine. After a few hours, Mike begins to have hallucinations in which he sees Tommy alive. He instructs him to go to the village and save his life. The night falls, and Mike's phone begins to ring, which is also a vision created by Mike's disturbed mind, and Tommy informs Mike that there is no way Mike can receive a call from his father in the middle of the desert. Mike pushes him away, but Tommy consoles him. Mike feels guilty because he believes he abandoned Jenny in the same way his father abandoned his mother, but Tommy assures him that Mike is not like his father because he will survive and return to Jenny. Mike returns to reality after a few seconds and finds himself surrounded by the dogs once more. The dogs attack him, causing him to have a vision of Tommy instructing him to use the Schumann maneuver technique, and he begins digging a trench in the sand. The mine explodes as Mike lifts his foot and jumps into the trench, losing both legs. However, this was just a hallucination, and the dogs are now attacking Mike from all sides. He recalls Jenny's final words to him, that he will always be a brave soldier, which inspires him to fight the dogs with all his might, eventually killing them with his knife. In the morning, with only 7 hours until the rescue team arrives, Mike is contacted by the Major, who delivers more bad news. The Major informs Mike that the team will be 10 hours late in reaching him, and that he will now have to wait 17 hours. Mike tells him he can't do it, and the Major agrees to let Mike speak with Jenny. Mike becomes emotional when he hears Jenny's voice and expresses his regret for abandoning her and coming to this desert. He is about to fall to the ground as the connection distorts, but is saved by the Berber. While tending to Mike's wounds, the Berber reveals that he too had a leg blown off by a mine. He goes on to say that when he was taken to the hospital, he was terrified, and all he could think about was a bad future. Then a nurse approached him and smiled, and the Berber listened to a song on the radio that said you had to keep moving forward. That nurse is now his wife. The Berber advises Mike that sometimes bad things happen to make your life better. He would not have met his lovely wife if he hadn't stepped on that mine. He gives Mike some medication and warns him that it will cause him to experience hallucinations. Mike tells the Berber that he has seen his daughter. The Berber informs him that his daughter died in the same mine explosion that injured him, and that Mike's vision was a hallucination. He explains that he and his daughter used to carefully extract mines and replace them with metal tins that they then sold for money. Despite his misfortunes, the Berber regards himself as a free man and encourages Mike to do the same. The Berber departs, and Mike's mind begins to play tricks on him, causing him to relive the past he despises. He recalls his childhood and how his father abused him and his mother. He also recalls harassers attacking Jenny at a bar, and sees his mother on her deathbed. He then sees Tommy, who informs Mike that the rescue team has arrived and he needs to notify them so they don't pass him by. In Mike's hallucination, Tommy hands him his flare gun to signal the rescue team, but when Mike awakens, he discovers that the flare gun is lying far away from him. He tries to reach for the gun himself, but as he leans forward, he is shot by his enemies, who had fled due to the storm but have returned now that they have found their target. Mike notices himself bleeding and recalls his last words with Jenny, prompting him to be optimistic and grab the flare gun. The attackers continue to shoot at him as he struggles to use the gun, causing a mine to explode and the flare gun to slip from his grasp. Mike decides to fight back, picking up his own gun and shooting and eventually killing the attackers. He notices one person left, and just as he is about to shoot him, the gun runs out of bullets. As the person approaches, Mike realizes that it's his father. He has another hallucination in which he sees his mother on her deathbed advising him to move on. Mike's father quickly approaches him and gives him a warm hug before instructing him to proceed. Mike is moved when he sees his abusive father being nice to him, and he decides to reach for the flare gun once more. Mike is optimistic this time, remembering that there is a 7% chance the mine will not explode. He sings the song that the Berber told him he listened to while in the hospital, telling him to keep moving forward. Mike finally lifts his foot and realizes there is no mine beneath his foot, but rather a metal tin that the Berber's daughter used to replace whenever she took out mines to sell. When he opens the metal can, he discovers the toy soldier that the Berber's daughter had given him earlier. Mike bursts into tears and laughter as he sees this and fires the flare gun to alert the rescue team. He is rescued from the desert's perilous conditions, and on his way back to Jenny at the airport, he proposes to her. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more videos.